Okay, so I've got the BeastX installed. I've got all the wires routed. Everything is connected. Now we're going to go ahead and walk through the BeastX install. I'm going to go ahead and do this in a couple of steps. We'll go through the setup menus. I'm going to start on this vid. We'll talk about the tail. I've got a couple of tips that I wanted to share with you guys about how to set up the tail to make it a little bit easier. It's fairly cut and dry if you're used to programming any other advanced gyro. It's a lot of the stuff is pretty much the same, but I got a couple of things I want to show you that you can get into during setup. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll just go ahead and let the BeastX initialize. And after that we can go into the setup menu. Entering setup is fairly easy. We're just going to use the setup button. You can hold the setup button. If you get a when you get to the rapid flash, you can go right into the parameters menu, or you can skip over that to a solid light and get the setup menu. So let's go ahead and do that. So there's the rapid flash, and then to a solid light. Okay, so now we're in the setup menu. Step A is just the orientation. Is it laying horizontal or is it vertical? Blue is for flat or horizontal, so we're going to leave it just like that. Step B is for the Swashplate Servo Frequency. The high-tech HS 5065 MGs, they do use 200 Hertz. The BeastX servo database says 200 Hertz for these. So we'll just use the rudder stick. Purple is the default at 50, so we'll just use the rudder stick and we'll cycle through each of the colors until we get what we want. 200 is solid blue. You can go in either direction, it doesn't really matter. Just when you get the setting that you want, then you can move on. Step C is the center pulse for the servo. This is a great time to go ahead and set up the servo horn. Find your 90 degrees, get your ball mounted where you want it. For this particular one I chose 7 millimeters to the tail. I've got the Bobby Watts tail on here, and with 7 millimeters I get fairly adequate throw on the servo, and then I can also maximize the travel here on the tail. But the point here is that you can leave this at this setting as long as you want to. The servo is just going to lock into its center pulse. If you were to change, you would push the servo to a different center pulse depending on what else is there. For us, this particular one wants to use a 1520 center pulse, and so that's where we're going to leave it at 1520. That's blue on the LED, and so we can move on to the Servo Frequency. Now, the Hyperion servos are all rated to be able to handle up to 400 Hertz. So the highest setting closest to that we can use is going to be 333 Hertz on the BeastX. So we'll get the light to go to blue flashing. Again, it defaults at 50. I think the BeastX errs on the side of caution. All the servos, the default settings are 50 Hertz. So the odds of you burning up a servo are slim to none when you first set them up. So it's kind of nice when you do that. So we'll just go ahead and scroll through. We'll get to this blue flashing LED. This is where we have our 333 Hertz, and that's where we're going to run this one at. And we'll just run it nice and fast. I have my DS20 GMD servo on my Big Bird. I've run it at 333 and at 270 as well. I personally like the 333, so that's where I leave it. Step E, aptly named E, is rudder endpoints. A little tip for this one here, and then for the next couple of steps here too. If you stand your tail blades up vertical, your hub, and then you bend the top tail blade forward, whichever direction you push the rudder stick, whichever direction this tail points, is going to be the direction that the nose is going to rotate. So if the tail went this way, the nose would actually rotate this way in flight. So it's a great way on the bench for you to tell if this thing is moving in the right direction. and if you've got your servos doing what they're supposed to. So let's go ahead and do the endpoint. So you can just slowly move the rudder stick in one direction or the other to set that endpoint. When you get it set, the status LED is going to go, it'll flutter and then go to a solid light. It'll either be blue or red depending on which direction you go first. The direction you start doesn't really matter. It's just a matter of seeing that color for each one. When it's done and it knows that you've gone both directions to set both endpoints, it'll tell you by turning purple. So let's go ahead and set these endpoints then. And here's one other thing too. If you have to, you can see what I'm doing here is I'm moving back and forth, and this thing is going to stay in here as long as it needs to, and I'm doing this longer than necessary just show you guys here. You don't have to be afraid that you're going to miss your chance and have to run through all the setup again. You can play around with it until you get it exactly where you want it, and when you're ready, then just let go, and then the light will flutter and go solid. It went blue when I went that direction, so we'll go ahead and move it all the way to the hub. Usually I go until I hear the servo chattering and then I back it off, and it'll flutter again, and then the solid purple light will tell you that it's done. So I've set both directions of my endpoint. Coincidentally too, as I moved the stick, I was able to watch which direction this tail blade was moving to be able to tell whether or not I'm doing it correctly. So let's move on to the last step on the tail. That's step F. This one here is just which direction is the gyro going to compensate for you when you rotate the helicopter. Two settings, you can normal or reversed, but here's where this comes into play and where this works out very well for you. You can pick the heli up and turn it, and you can see just by watching this which direction those blades are turning. You can see that as I rotate the nose, you see how the blades are rotating or compensating in the same direction as I rotate the nose. So we know that's backwards. Just a simple flick of the rudder stick, and now I have it compensating correctly. You see the tail blade is moving opposite of the direction the nose is going, so we know that it's doing what it's supposed to, and that's good. So we've got that done. So that's that for the tail setup. I'm going to go ahead and exit the setup menu now, and I'm going to show you this. You can skip over any of these settings until you get everything done. So I'm just going to quickly go all the way through and just let it initialize itself, because then you can see as I move my tail that I'm getting the correct deflection. Let's see if I can show this to you here. See, the direction I move the rudder stick is the same as the direction that tail blade is moving. So that tells you that it's correcting or deflecting in the correct direction. So that's a really cool tip. I actually learned that from a buddy of mine. Pauvern is his name on Heli Freak. My friend Paul, he showed that to me, and then I actually forgot it for a little while and then picked it up again somewhere else along the line. But anyway, great way to set up the tail by flipping that down. So okay, alright, that's all there is for tail setup. Stay tuned and we'll go through the cyclic setup next.